Are you a diver and you maybe even take photos or videos underwater? Then this live stream is for you. Because we believe that everyone who takes images underwater is already an ocean ambassador. And to make sure that you can do your job properly and inspire people out there to care for the ocean and eventually protect it, we collected your questions beforehand on social media, and we're going to ask those questions to creative professionals from the industry. And we are sending live from the world's largest water sports show here in Düsseldorf, the Boat Show, which is taking place from 18th to 26th of January. You're going to find us live in Hall 11 at the Pixel World workshop stage. Make sure you follow us on social media, on the Behind the Mask Facebook page and on the Behind the Mask YouTube channel. Turn on your notifications and most importantly, ask your questions down in the comments and maybe we will even be able to pick up your question and forward your question to our guest. And one more thing, by leaving us a comment, you already have a chance to win amazing prizes. And now you have a chance to see a lot of big teeth, right? Shark conservation filmmaking seems to some people like the biggest nightmare. To the other guys, it seems like to be the biggest dream. We're super stoked that we have Andy Casagrande here with us today. Hey, Andy.
It's good to be here.
Just came in. How was the travel?
Pretty good. No sleep, but you know, it's way easier than most things, just sitting on a plane. So yeah.
Is that the first time you're here at the show?
First time, been to Germany a few times, but first time to boot. Yeah, actually it's called boat, right? I keep messing that up.
Yeah, boat. I think it's not really defined. Good. I think, I mean, I could talk like, I don't know, an hour to introduce what you're doing, but I think we should start with like your personal own story, you know, and you have an amazing little production to actually show that. So I think we show that first, and after that we dig right into everything what's behind it.
Sounds good. Yeah, I got a funny name. Andy Brandy Casagrande the Fourth. The fourth, that's a whole other story. Ever since I was a kid, I've been a little bit weird and a little bit crazy. I never really felt like one of the cool kids. I always felt like an outsider, but I liked it that way. Not to get too personal, but my mom was a paranoid schizophrenic. She had interesting perceptions of the world. I found that fascinating. Institutionally, the world doesn't really find it fascinating, they find it a problem. I find that's a problem in itself. I think that's kind of why I love sharks so much, because they seem to be a problem for most people. And when I first saw a shark, it definitely looked scary. It definitely looked like a sea monster. But I didn't see a problem in that animal. I saw this underdog, something that needed help. But anyway, back to my mom. She was incredible. She inspired me to basically break the rules. Be yourself. You only have one life. Live the life you dream. I moved to South Africa when I was 22 years old to volunteer as an unpaid great white shark field research assistant. And it basically changed my life. I was supposed to be there for 3 months, and I ended up staying for 3 years. Sharks have captivated my entire life since the moment I saw the first one. most people don't voluntarily jump into the ocean with great white sharks for any good reason. Why do I do it? I ask myself that question every time I'm in the water with them. For the most part, I feel safer underwater than I do topside. For some reason, like, I can only handle people for so long. Working with animals has been a life's passion and the greatest gift I could have ever imagined. I feel that it's my duty, my responsibility to show these images, tell these stories to the world, because people often struggle to conceptualize why the ocean is important. Especially when they live in a landlocked country or landlocked city. Like, who cares about sharks? It's a massive ocean. There's whales and there's seals and dolphins. There's plenty of other stuff in the ocean, right? Like, no, everything is interconnected so critically that we can only put so much pressure on something until it breaks. We're continually pushing animals to the brink of extinction. Everything on this planet is connected in one way or another. People just fear the unknown. If you remove any top predator from a food chain, from an ecosystem, there's catastrophic, irreversible effects that really we can't even fathom. One of the biggest threats right now to sharks, it's not finning, it's not overfishing. It's actually people like you and me. Every decision we make has a consequence. We're actually poisoning ourselves. Pollution and plastics are completely permeating the entire ecosystem, from the top predators down to the smallest fish. But there's hope. People can make a difference. We can make a change. If I can inspire people to realize just how powerful a single person can be, to protect the planet, to coexist with it, to make positive decisions, to make a positive impact, through my actions, my stories, my images, then maybe it's not too late.
Nice.
Okay,
Amazing.
hopefully I didn't put too many people to sleep with that one.
Oh, no, I don't think so. But I mean, for the guys who always think you need the biggest camera to make the most amazing pictures, this is shot on a Panasonic GH5.
Yeah, the majority of it was. There's a few red shots in there, but 90% of it was on GH5S.
Nice. Yeah.
That's your favorite camera, right?
That's my choice.
Amazing. Hey, what does a shark conservation filmmaker actually do?
You know what? I totally became a shark conservation filmmaker by accident. Only because when I was a little kid, I was fascinated with sharks purely because I saw them on television. You see them in books, you see them in magazines. And the reality is most people's education or understanding of a predator comes from the media. It doesn't really come from your school teacher or your college, because nowadays everyone's on their phones, everything's this instant access to, ultimate information, a lot of it which is actually incorrect. I mean, like your whole Behind the Mask, this whole campaign, anyone, no matter what camera you shoot, whether it's a GoPro or a Red or whatever it is, no matter what it costs, it's about the content you capture and the story you tell. And to me, it's like a double-edged sword because I work for the big networks, for Discovery, for Nat Geo, BBC, and on various levels, each network has their own strengths and weaknesses. Their biggest strengths is that they reach billions and billions of people. Their weakness is often that they chase ratings over truth, or over, when you say the C word at a network meeting, as in conservation, pretty much all the executives immediately get turned off. It's not to say they're bad people and they don't want to promote conservation. They just know that most of the world out there is working hard to, survive and just live their daily lives. And the last thing people want to see on television or on the internet at the end of a long day is really depressing, horrible footage of animals dying or the world coming to an end. So there's this, a formula that they try to deploy. So you get a little bit of conservation, a lot of entertainment, amazing visuals to keep people watching. Because if you show a film that's just purely hardcore conservation, relatively depressing, people turn it off. But if you show a film where some guy almost got his head bitten off by a great white, they're like, wow, this is interesting. And they may deep down be conservationists and they care about sharks, but they're human and they want to see something exciting that they haven't seen before. So it's a tricky business, to be honest, because without the networks and their big budgets, it's hard to get your message out sometimes. But now with the internet, you can pretty much make a YouTube film that millions, if not billions of people will see with zero funding, and you get a message out there without any corporate pressure to, keep the ratings up. I don't know, it's tough. It's tough to say, because for me as a kid, I watched Shark Week, and I saw the scary shots of great whites jumping out of the water, biting things, blood and guts. There's the sound of a dinosaur in the background somehow. And then as I got older and I started to dive with sharks, when I'm underwater, I actually don't hear dinosaurs. I don't hear explosions and sound effects. You actually just experience this coexistence where I've been lucky to film lions and polar bears and crocodiles, hyenas, a lot of terrestrial predators, but I've never met a predator anywhere on the planet as polite as a shark. I don't care if it's a white shark, a bull shark, a tiger. Sharks seem to be among the most polite predators on the planet, yet they have the most horrific, ridiculous reputation. They have the best marketing team on the planet, because you get like these single-digit fatalities every year, yet they're like the scariest animal in the world. It's the only animal really that has this massive following, this Shark Week, or and again, back to this Shark Week phenomenon, Jaws. No one can refute the fact that Jaws really sort of sculpted a lot of people's perception of sharks. Scared the fuck out of them, basically. But after Jaws, it became perfectly acceptable that the only good shark was a dead shark. You go to Long Island, Montauk, Cape Cod, you'd see all these dead sharks hanging up on docks. People would go out on personal vendettas to kill sharks. Shark Week sort of came around in the 80s, got more momentum, 90s, 2000, and now present day, although it's, again, good and bad, it's created this cult following that the entire world every year starts talking about sharks, whether they're afraid of them, whether they love them. I've got little kids since they were one year old watching sharks. Even my 4-year-old, I took him cage diving with great whites. We just had them out diving with hammerhead sharks, and they've seen the most cheesiest Shark Week shows with explosions and dinosaurs and blood and guts. But because I teach them that sharks are actually quite polite, and if you respect their rules, they'll respect yours, and you can kind of pull it off where you're not going to get eaten. I think people are smarter than most of the networks are creating this content for. They think that redneck America wants to see blood and guts, so let's give it to them. But there's actually quite a few Americans that can read properly, have passports, understand that we're all interconnected in some way. So anyway, that was a bit of a ramble. I forget what your question was, but I became totally by accident even a cameraman. I never even planned to become a filmmaker. I moved to Cape Town when I was 21, and I was working as a research cameraman, or taking still photographs of dorsal fins. This guy over here, Mornay, in his hometown, and now, becoming a filmmaker, I realize how powerful that is. So, yeah. I think it's, like I said, a double-edged sword. You can inspire people. There's a bit of fear, fascination, but I think the more and more people are talking about sharks, learning about their plight, you can have all the explosions and dinosaur roars in the background you want. People are starting to realize that sharks are in trouble. They need our help. They look scary on TV, but when you actually dive with them in real life, they're super polite, placid. Sometimes they're boring. You want them to come and chase you. You want a Shark Week show on your dive, and they're like, why is this shark why hasn't he paid me any attention? They're really only interested in the incentive that we're providing them, like bait or chum or whatever. Some of them are personable and come up and check you out. But anyway, it's like a huge lie that sharks are like, just, want to eat you.
So one question I always wanted to ask you is, you're out there filming all of that, and then you give it away. How does it feel? I mean, you film it, you're in the moment, you capture something, even if there is a storyboard and they tell you exactly what you want to get or whatever, you give it away, and then somebody else is making something completely different out of it.
It's true.
Does that like rip your heart out?
It's true. They often will like entice you. They say, hey, we want to make a film about great white sharks hunting inshore in this area where they're coming along the beaches. They might be eating stingrays, other sharks. Maybe it's a pupping ground. And you shoot the film, you get this amazing footage of white sharks inshore and this amazing stuff. And then there's this underlying layer that the sharks are moving inshore because people are there. And I mean, I'm not stupid. I know the networks well enough that you could kind of play them. You could kind of play the game both ways. They want ratings, and you want to show amazing imagery that inspires people to care about the planet, care about sharks. It's tricky, though, because you can go out and shoot the best footage that you've ever shot, but once you hand it over to the network, it's their film. And no matter what they tell you at the beginning what their film is about, sometimes it turns out the way that you thought, but sometimes you don't even tell your parents that the film you just shot is on television tonight because you're embarrassed about it. It doesn't happen that often, but every once in a while, it is what it is.
Practical question, because now we think we're going to weave in the questions a little bit as we tag along. How can you become an underwater cameraman working for big productions like National Geographic? Very simple, straightforward question.
You know what? I don't think there's any particular path that you can take. There's plenty of filmmakers out there that are way better than me, way better at focus, framing, white balance, whatever it is. I'm not the best cameraman in the world, and there's a lot of other cameramen out there that are working for the networks that may not be the best technicians. Like Laurent, this guy, the French guy, the 700 Sharks, amazing photographer, amazing filmmaker. He got in because he's very talented. He's good at what he does. I got in by, I was living in Mornay's town, working as a research photographer, and the National Geographic came down to make a film about the research we were doing. I was starting to, push the envelope a little bit, and it was sort of the right place at the right time. But really, you just have to be passionate. And if you can tell stories and capture them well on camera and you're easy to work with, the reality is, like Nat Geo, Discovery, BBC, they're all playing catch-up now to Netflix because for some reason all these brick-and-mortar networks were asleep when the internet came out, and Netflix was like, wow, we can actually distribute our content around the world at any time they want to watch it, as opposed to sitting down at 8 o'clock. No one can do that anymore. So the answer is just be passionate, work hard, good karma always helps, and then hang out with guys like you.
Like us?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's kind of funny because you tell the same story that Mornay was already telling, so we can see kind of a pattern. Put yourself out there, right? Just take the opportunities you get.
Yeah.
And then
and you're only
along.
as good as your last job. If you screw it up, they're probably going to call Mornay next time, or your next competitor,
just
or whatever.
Bribe him to screw up as well, and then.
There you go.
Okay. Let's have some imagery. Just in between, because I mean, you've been sending stuff over, like videos and photos,
random
and
clips. Yeah.
Probably just it just shows something. What are we seeing here?
This was actually out in Guadalupe, just down in one of the deep cages.
Are you ever really living?
This is my wife swimming through some cave in Florida. This was actually a Red Collective piece that Red put together. This is a poorly white balanced hammerhead shot. You can see a lot of green in there. I know you did a video about white balancing with blue filters, red filters. Often when you shoot with it for the networks, they want you to shoot a daylight white balance, 5600, matches the topside cameras, matches the 8 GoPros that you're shooting, matches the second operator, and then you rely on some dude in New York City who's never been in the water with sharks, sitting in a little edit room. He's like, oh, that looks pretty good. A little more purple in there. Yeah, that looks perfect. And then you're like, okay, that's how it looks.
Amazing.
But this was a Red Collective we did in the Bahamas. You know, they've done a handful on different filmmakers, and again, I think it just boils down to a lot of people. I actually know a lot of friends of mine that have gone out. They've bought Red camera systems, $70,000, $80,000 camera systems, because they thought this is the way that I get into the business. All I got to do is buy a Red, and I'll be Mornay, or I'll be working like Andy, and they've had to sell their systems. The reality is, it's like there's so many films being made, and there's so many different outlets that you can apply yourself to. The big networks are very competitive, and they're really not the only game in town anymore, because YouTube, any sort of self-made filmmaking is starting to take off, it seems.
There's not a single day that goes by that I don't have someone tell me.
But I mean, you dive with orcas, leopard seals, sharks. I'm sure, what about your parents? Do they often think that you're crazy because you're out swimming with these predators that
They don't
can
have
kill
internet.
you? They don't have internet.
That's how Flo gets around it. He disconnected their internet.
Oh, wow.
No. I just talk a lot to them, and they know what's
But you have to
going on.
agree, like just getting there, being in the taxi from Cape Town to wherever you're going is way more dangerous than it is actually
Absolutely.
in the water with these sharks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I try to make my my niece tag along from time to time, and try to involve them in the project, and so they kind of see everything firsthand.
That's cool.
And realize that
But I mean, you can see like a lot of people around the world are now going to the same locations. People go to Bimini, they go to Cape Town. Well, Cape Town and the White Sharks have been struggling lately, but New Zealand, Guadeloupe, Norway, it's more and more people, everyday people can go out even with a GoPro and capture incredible content and become, like you said, ambassadors for the ocean, which I think is huge. Even my little son, he's been out filming with his GoPro and gets impressive content for a 4-year-old, 6-year-old.
What I noticed is that by doing all of these things, and we have like a very tight connection to like a direct output, like on social media, it might always, like many times, give the impression that what we do is something that everybody can do in the holiday. So the expectations are pretty high, you know, and you know how social media works.
Yeah.
Everything is pretty fast, and you know, you see only cool things, and all of a sudden you have the feeling that everybody's doing amazing things except you. You know, and then you're on a trip, and then everybody starts complaining. You know, we're already out there here for 4 hours. Where are the orcas?
Yeah.
You know, so it's. I think there is always
Expectations.
like
is
you
always,
like you also do it. I think it's very important to also show the things behind everything. You know, and I think
But
that's the
it's
reason
true.
why it's pretty interesting to do shows like this, because we can actually talk about how much effort and time goes into producing something that, like, you know, really stands out or is you know, going to be seen by a lot of people.
But you're right about social media. I mean, people see a post that you make and like, hey, I want to do that. I was just in Bimini walking up the stairs to the big game club, and this guy walks past me like, hey, are you Andy? Yeah. Hey, we're here because of you. Oh, awesome. Nice to meet you. He's like, no, literally, the post you made last week, we saw the hammerhead sharks. We said we have to do it, and we're here because of your post. I'm like, it is. You create this ambassadorship where people, that's why it's important to disseminate positive, correct, accurate information, and it gets challenging. I mean, even my good friends, you may know them, Ocean Ramsey and Juan Oliphant. I mean, every post that they make is this like 6-page, you know, conservation message. And I won't lie, like they're good friends of mine, but when I see 6 pages on Instagram, I look at the picture,
If I like it, and then I keep going. And then within 5 minutes, I'm bored of Instagram, onto something else. So I think it's important for people to convey their messages. Not to say that they're not they've got millions of followers. There are plenty of people out there that read all 6 pages. But I think creating a community where conservation is cool. It's cool to be a conservationist. It's cool. Because in America, like, there's this, I can't really get into the politics and all that bullshit, but it's this sort of like, I don't care attitude where, oh, climate change isn't real. It's just a cycle. This isn't real. It'll all go away if I just keep doing what I'm doing. But it's not true. It won't go away.
What are we seeing here?
That was a FinCam system. I like trying to innovate different cameras. So that's on a tiger shark in the Bahamas. It's just a GoPro, but rolling at 4K 60. You get a cool perspective of what it's like to be cruising around hunting on the bottom like a tiger. And it was actually, I think this is Emma, which is a relatively famous female. And you'll see that she's got the camera on her back. It's non-invasive. It's got a saltwater dissolve and a little VHF transmitter. And,
so it just falls off and you pick it up wherever it comes up?
Yeah, but with the tigers, they're pretty famous for actually eating it or chewing on it. I was just on a National Geographic film shoot in French Polynesia. We deployed a fin cam on a juvenile tiger. It swam away. At 15 minutes, it came back. No camera. We listened for it at the surface. It wasn't there. And I have footage of white sharks. When the camera pops off, they feel it pop off, and they turn around, and they just can't help themselves. Investigate it. Sometimes they eat it. Sometimes they spit it out. They eventually always spit it out.
Pretty smart, making sure nobody messes up the
destroy the
post-production.
evidence. They're smart.
Yeah, there you go. They didn't sign the release, so they don't want the footage out there.
Cool.
This is actually also in Mornay's hometown in Hansby. Just think, again, white sharks are big and scary. They have the ability to consume you. There have been a few consumptive attacks on people, usually spear fishermen or someone that's sort of, playing with fire. But I just find that they're way more polite and safer to interact with than most people think. And this is a GoPro clip where it's just cool that you can actually capture stable footage on a GoPro that's relatively well exposed, and because people often think the only way to get into the business is with a really good camera. And most of the stuff I post is just GoPro, because easier to work with and lighter. If I could travel the world and just carry GoPros around,
that would be nice.
That'd be so much better.
Imagine the luggage fees that you would save.
Yes.
When you get in the water, what is the first perimeter or thing that you pay attention on to decide whether this is going to be a positive situation that you want to be involved in together with the sharks? Or is there also moments where you go like, this is probably not the day?
Yeah, I mean, visibility is a huge factor. Any common sense, common sense to me is like the most important skill set to have when you're dealing with big predators. And you can also just get the vibe. You jump in the water, the sharks are tense, you're tense. But for the most part, if the visibility is good, you respect your space and their space. Again, they're not really coming there to check you out. They're usually at a seal colony or at a place where you've provided some incentive, chum, bait, whatever it is. And when they lose interest in that, they start taking more interest in you, and you just get to know more of their personality. Some sharks out there, they do want to bite you. I'm not really buying into the rogue shark theory, but after 20 years of interacting with white sharks, there are a handful of individuals that I know they will try to bite me. So just either get out of the water or get whatever shots you can, get back into the cage. It's just like you go to a sketchy bar here in Germany, see some dude with like black eye, bloody knuckles, and you don't really walk up and ask to get a selfie with him, or maybe you do, but you might suffer the consequences.
What's going on in your head when you have like a storyboard that you need to shoot, but you also have like your antennas like on the real thing that is happening there? And I know that there's like, you can film horrific things as long as you have a camera in front, right? And you can be detached to what's actually going on. I think that's also happening to a lot of people filming,
right?
No matter where they go. Like in this case, you should be a little bit more prepared for that, right? I think you have some strategy in place to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, you do go into this sort of Zen state where you know you're there to document it. It is hard when you, like, aside from sharks, the most horrific things I've filmed is seeing hyenas and crocodiles eat baby zebras, where the zebra's still alive and it's missing all of its legs, but somehow it's still breathing. I don't even know what I'm talking about, but yeah, you just go into that state where you're there to document. You also don't want to get too complacent where you forget the fact that it's not the shark in front of you have to worry about, it's the two behind you.
How do you deal with that?
I always have a safety diver somewhere. Like when any of these shots, it's someone who's shooting me, but their priority is safety. But at the end of the day, when you're underwater, you have to, watch your own back.
Yeah.
You can't really rely on your safety diver to keep you safe. I've had some really, really bad safety divers. The best one I ever had was a guy that actually had been bit by a white shark in New Zealand. He's the safety diver where the worst safety diver is the guy who's right behind you watching your back, but he's really watching your monitor. It's like, oh, that's a good shot. You're like, fuck, you're not supposed to be looking the direction I am. You're supposed to be looking the other way. So my best safety diver out of New Zealand, anytime I was looking this way, I'd look at him. He would always be looking there, always be looking there.
Yeah.
You never want your safety diver looking in the same direction as you because the whole point is for them to have eyes in the back of your head. So, yeah, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors. TV, I mean, at the end of the day, you are interacting with a predator that can potentially, get frustrated with you and want to try to bite you. But I don't know. I've never had any. I've never been bit. The scariest thing that's ever happened was my wife almost got decapitated by a tiger shark at Tiger Beach. It was our fault. It was on a GoPro film shoot. And she has long blonde hair. The bait handler was baiting the tiger in with this big mahi-mahi fillet, big piece of white fish. Tiger kept getting agitated, couldn't get the fish, swam over my wife's head. Of course, it was my wife's first time diving with tiger sharks. And my instruction to her was, don't fuck it up. Hold the shot stable. I forgot to tell her about the safety stuff, but I told her about the cinema stuff. Hold the shot stable. If the shark swims at you, let it enter frame, exit frame. Don't have Parkinson's disease. Just hold it stable. So the shark's swimming over her head. She's holding it stable. She's waiting for the tail to exit frame, but she doesn't realize that the shark's contorted its entire body, opened its mouth, put its bottom jaw here, top jaw here. It's all captured on all these GoPros that GoPro never let us release, which I wouldn't have released it anyway. But at the last second, she reacted, pushed the shark away, and she was fine. But it was our mistake, my mistake, and
okay, cool.
Yeah.
To cool us a little bit off, we get back to
yeah.
crazy to get back to a question. Rupert, actually one of our friends, why is it often recommended to film underwater action in double the frame rate?
I mean, slow motion is pretty straightforward. Anytime you can capture an action that happens at the speed of life, 24 frames, 30 frames, it can happen really fast. When you see a white shark launching out of the water at 1,000 frames per second, or even whales in Tonga at 60 frames, it just allows the human eye to appreciate the movement, the motion, and slow it down to be a bit more. I mean, when you see like Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, when he walks away from an explosion, it's not at 30p, it's either at 120 or 60 frames.
Yeah.
It just creates this more dramatic effect where the animal seems larger than life. And for me, it just allows you to appreciate the dynamics better.
What is this? A kind of a jump to New Zealand?
This was a couple years ago off the north shore of New Zealand.
This really makes a lot of people jealous.
This is the dream.
And this was I color corrected this in iMovie on the plane home after like 3 or 4 bottles of the little wine, and that's why it looks like a cartoon. But that was a GoPro Hero 3 on a drone. This was quite a few years ago. But yeah, interacting with orcas, killer whales, animals that can consume pretty much anything they want in the ocean. They're intimidating for sure. In this area, they're actually hunting large fish and sharks. Up in Norway, where they're hunting herring, smaller species, you're not as concerned. But as far as we know, orcas have never really been aggressive or attacked humans in the wild. We all know the SeaWorld story, Blackfish. But yeah, I mean, these guys eat sharks for breakfast. So I have a lot of respect for these guys. And you guys, the stuff you've done in Norway, mind-blowing. And you said it only happened in the afternoon. Shot it on a GoPro, you weren't even looking kind of stuff.
No. And we are pretty good prepared. But it's, yeah, of course. I mean, things like that, especially in Norway, is just pure luck. And this is why I mentioned earlier, you see this and you think this is just the way it is.
Right.
You know, this is basically as good as it gets. And you have to prepare yourself to take everything as an experience and be open to, you know, not only focus on one thing. But yeah, no, I mean, is there a difference, like when the orcas go for herrings and the orcas go for bigger prey, that they...
I found the orcas in New Zealand were way more interactive, as in they would just swim straight at you and look at you, swim around you, interact with you, or just do flybys, where the orcas in Norway, there was a lot of avoidance behavior there. I mean, there's so many boats, there's not really any regulations yet. And they're purely focused on feeding on the bait balls. So, I mean, you guys, whatever drugs you gave the orcas, they were, you know, swimming and
We're not allowed to talk about
posing right in front of you. But this is a blue nose. At 1,000 feet, they're diving down to catch these fish that grow to about 1 meter long. And they'll food share, and they come up and check you out. But they never really expressed any aggression. Very curious. They would often just turn and look at you. But they were a lot more relaxed there, and they had more time to focus on you. Plus, there was sunlight, and there was visibility, and it was warm. So all the things you don't get in Norway, you can get in New Zealand.
That's the
Do you need a special permit to do that?
You do. I was working with the Orca Research Trust, which is Ingrid Visser, and there's a few people that have permits, marine mammal permits, few people that just show up in New Zealand, jump in the water, and do what they want, and, you know, it is what it is.
Another one. Any advantage or disadvantage from videography point of view to use a rebreather?
I mean, rebreathers definitely have an advantage to allow you to stay underwater for a long period of time. No bubbles, which is huge. What do you call it? The disadvantage is that it's a computer that's keeping you alive. We've all had a handful of friends die on rebreathers. I've got a lot of friends that are hardcore rebreather divers. They're not dead. They do it every day. They're adamant that it's, you know, usually human error. I've dived rebreathers for a few years, back in 2009 to 2012. I still have it in my garage, but my wife asked me to stop diving them. Most of the stuff I do is between the surface and 100 feet. Sharks don't seem to mind the bubbles too much. So, plus it's a lot of work to tech your rebreather. If I could have like a rebreather tech that followed me around the world and did it all for me, and, like, you know, also could tech my camera, that would be awesome.
That sounds like a fun
But
time.
yeah, I don't think that's going to happen.
Interesting perspective, because we're always thinking...
What about you? Do you dive rebreather?
No,
No,
not yet.
not
Yeah.
yet.
Not yet.
Hopefully in
We
the
thought about,
plans,
there is
let's
the Mars, like,
new one.
kind of semi-closed, what is it
Right.
called, the Horizon?
Yeah, I'm not sure what it's called, but I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about. The
it's a
new
little
ones.
bit more easier to maintain and easier to
Right.
transport. I think it works
Yeah.
with nitrox. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm just making a fool of myself right now, but this could
Yeah.
be something. I always think it would get much easier to actually get closer and be more immersed. Not only for the sharks, obviously, but, like, you know, like normal reef
Marine life in
life
general.
and whatever it is. But
Oh,
you know,
it's
just
true.
wanted to hear your perspective on it, and it's actually quite cool that you don't think it's such a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, when I was on rebreather, it is cool. You're down there. You don't really hear that Darth Vader effect. You're not. You're silent. Your loop is pretty silent. The air is warm. It's awesome that you have no bubbles. You don't really have to come up for 5-6 hours. There's definitely advantages, but it just. Plus, you can't be the only I did a few shoots where I was the only guy in a rebreather. I'm like, this makes no sense. My safety diver's blowing bubbles fucking everywhere. I'm on a rebreather. They've got to go up after every hour. It just didn't make any sense. So if you're going to do it, you should have a really solid partner who's your rebreather buddy. Yeah, it's really not my world.
What are the biggest challenges and most common mistakes when starting wide-angle underwater filmmaking?
It's a very general question. One thing I've seen a lot, just in general, like when people, I work on a lot of film shoots where even a GoPro, GoPro's a wide-angle camera, right? But when your assistant or whoever it is, they prep the GoPros, they give it to you. There's a giant thumbprint. There's some kind of hair, lint. Like, number one rule is keep your lens super clean. I'm super anal about equipment. I'm sure you guys are too. Yeah, like wide angle, get close. But you can tell a story with a wide angle where, obviously you don't have different focal lengths to work with, and the only way to move in on something is to physically get up in their face, get back. You still need wides, mediums, tights, even if you're shooting on a wide angle. So, common mistakes. Yeah, flooding your camera because the O-rings aren't clean, forgetting the batteries, leaving the lens cap on, putting it in the house. I've had
yikes.
I've seen a lot of mistakes, I guess, and I'm sure I've made a few. It's been a while. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one common mistake is to not understand that a wide angle doesn't give you the ability to actually go further away from your object.
Yeah.
Right.
Like you need to be close. It's kind of a trick, right? You pretend to be far away, but you actually have to be very close with a wide lens, so that you get all the sharpness, the contrast, and the color and the light effect that you want. So get used to the angle and just get close. I mean, that's basically what it is, right? This is your show reel.
Oh, this is this is funny. I did a conservation event in China this year or last year, and I asked Discovery. It was for Discovery. They said, "Will you go to China and talk about sharks?" I said, "Sure." They said, "We're going to create a promo reel for you." I said, "We're trying to promote conservation, so if you can make the reel, no bait, no teeth, no dinosaurs roaring, just make it beautiful. Use phantom footage, slow motion." And they cut this, which is all teeth, all chaos. You get a mix of submarines, but it was just bite after bite after bite after bite. So I showed this, and then I showed them another one I called Shark Dream, which was more what I believe, or what I love about sharks is their peaceful moments when they're just being sharks, just cruising around. But a lot of the audience wants to see sharks biting things.
Are you friend with Shaquille O'Neal now?
I wouldn't say I'm friends with him. I am friends with Michael Phelps. We took him shark diving, and we're still buddies, but I am not really good pals with Shaq. He was a funny guy. He may remember me, but he was cool.
Yeah, because I played basketball.
Okay.
On a professional level before.
You did?
So I know.
Oh, wow.
I know all of these guys, and I kind of want to know why is he so old? Like he's definitely not able to play ball anymore.
Right.
In case anyone knows what I'm talking about, this is
around the world. Black people don't really get in the water. They don't dive. It's a common phenomenon in many places I go. Shaq has millions, if not billions, of followers that love him as a basketball star. Taking him diving with sharks, having him say in the film, "I'm Shaquille O'Neal. I love sharks. Sharks are amazing." It's creating this whole new audience, this whole new campaign to get people to talk about sharks. Even if they're just talking about, learning about, well, I thought sharks just bit people. No, actually, people bite sharks. We're the ones killing all the sharks out there, and they need our help. It just creates more of a dialogue. So celebrities bring their fan base to Shark Week or to Sharks and Nat Geo, and I think it just creates more awareness.
Was it like a Shark Week ad teaser trailer?
Yeah, we did a 1-hour show with him called Shaq Does Shark Week or something. But we just took him diving in the Bahamas, but he liked it. He was down. We wanted to take him to do white sharks, but his schedule wouldn't allow it, so.
Svenjamin, beautiful name. When filming underwater, as nothing can be planned and filmed 100% of the time, do you film and then edit a story together accordingly, or are you filming with a clear storyboard in mind that you are trying your best to stick to, so when it comes to editing, it fits together nicely? I mean, I know, you're not like the big editing guy.
Yeah.
But still, is it like more opportunistic? and you just get whatever you can get, or do
Right.
you like focus on specific shots and you know?
If I'm out making my own project, my own film or stock footage, I just let it happen. I jump in the water. I have some, you know, if you're filming hunting or predation or some sort of behavior, you know what happens in this area. You go there at the right time. Try to spend as much time in the water as possible. You do have a rough idea of what you're trying to capture, but you just let it unfold. If you're doing a shoot for the network, they want a shark to jump through a hula hoop left to right. They keep wanting you to get that shot of a shark going left to right. But eventually, they realize that sharks are wild animals. They're going to do whatever they want. So you try to stick to the storyboard as much as you can, but at the end of the day, you capture what you capture. You can't force a shark to do something. So, yeah, it's kind of like you try to stick to the plan, but what happens, happens.
What happened?
And this is a shark, a famous shark on the North Shore named Roxy, who was actually caught by one of the researchers, and there's a satellite tag on her fin. But her jaw is broken. They believe she was caught on a long line. Fishermen, by the time they got to her, tigers are very robust. They'll struggle for a while, and then they'll just hang out on a long line. Hammerheads will struggle until they're dead. They just basically never give up. But this one is very famous, super friendly, or if you want to call that friendly, she's very tactile, wants to bump the camera, and but not aggressive, just really curious.
You've been mentioning this one before?
And this one,
is an amazing shot.
Oh, yeah.
This one was in New Zealand. It was just like a reveal shot with a slow-mo Phantom camera.
How many frames a second is this?
700.
Wow.
I think it might have been sped up a little, but I shot it at 700. But you can see it's just super curious. Like that was on a 14 millimeter Zeiss lens. The shark was, you know, a few inches from the dome port, just swimming up, almost looking at itself in the reflection of the dome port, and then just cruising by.
Amazing.
And the same thing, this was in Mexico. You can see that shark was pretty chewed up. It had a lot of, you've been to Guadalupe, yeah?
Yep.
A lot of scars, and, you know, recently they have had some issue with sharks in the cages. A big one that had a strap around it for a while.
Beautiful. Beautiful shots. Most time people post images on social media that show a cool fish, a landscape, some great wide angle scene, but our seas are in danger. Many species are facing extinction. How can we help creating more awareness to ordinary people about the challenges of our oceans through our underwater imaging? What can we do to really make an impact to wider society, not just to be a small community of specialists? I know we've been struggling with this for a long time. You know, because it's kind of difficult. You have the box, which is the guilty box, the finger. You know, you see something and you already smell this is something that I know I have to be interested in, but it's not giving me a good feeling, and I kind of, you know, I think it's a natural reaction. So I think, you know, from our end, until we get a better idea, we try to inspire people by how beautiful the ocean is and how cool everything is, and hope that they can make like this, you know, understand and see that this is important to protect it. What is your approach to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are like two separate types of conservationists or social media conservationists. People like Madison Stewart that are out there really documenting, you know, pretty horrific decimation of sharks in Indonesia and in different parts of the world, where a lot of her feed is this, you know, I love her, she's awesome, but it's sometimes hard to watch the content because it is depressing, and unless you see content that depresses you and has an action item, okay, you saw this dead tiger shark, its fins are cut off, there's 20 more on the dock. That's horrible. But what can you do to stop that? You can't really just show people horrible stuff without an action item. There's a famous couple that worked for National Geographic and still do for the past 50, 40 years. They're called the Rebreathers. They're based in South Africa. And they, in Botswana. And they, for years, have made these amazing big cat films. And a few years ago, they were at a National Geographic seminar in Washington, D.C. And I was there watching one of their films. They presented their film, and it was beautiful, very well shot, some conservation messages in there. And at the end of their film, they're like, well, we hope you like our film. We realize it has done nothing to help big cats around the world. And everyone's like, what do you mean? It's beautiful. We care about them now. We're crying. Like, yes, you might be crying now, but when you leave tonight, you're going to have a beer, wake up tomorrow, do whatever, and you're going to forget all about it because there's not an action item on what they can do to help. I'd sort of take the same approach where I like to show people what a great white shark or a killer whale looks like when it's perfectly happy and healthy in the perfect environment where it should be, living and coexisting, as it always has. Because people, as a kid, and my kids and most kids, they get pumped. They're like, wow, I want to see that shark. So I think there's a way where you show them the good side, a little bit of the bad side, and then give them an action item, a way like Sea Legacy. Paul Nicklin and his team are doing amazing things where they focus on a specific issue. The salmon farms or the pebble mine or whatever specific issue that it is, instead of just saying save the planet, no, let's save this particular region. They put pressure, they get government legislation passed, and they make a difference. So it's tough. You don't want to fool the world into thinking that it's always perfectly healthy and everything's going great. But there are certain areas where animals are still thriving. They're still protected. I think we should showcase that and then also shine light on the plight where they aren't that well off.
You got a question?
Yeah, I was watching the live streams as you guys are talking, and I picked up on one question that seemed very interesting, and it's what you're saying right now. I mean, going back to when you first started talking, you were talking about how Discovery Channel, Nat Geo, they've sort of fallen behind the times compared to the likes of Netflix, where whenever I want, I can watch something.
Right.
So, and you have the reach right now in terms of you're the one who's filming all this. So in an ideal world where you could leverage the likes of instant technologies through Netflix, and you could broadcast a message about sharks, and you had full control over it, what would be the message that you would send and how would it be different from the likes of Discovery Channel and Nat Geo?
Oh, that's tough, bro.
Good luck with this one.
I mean, the coexistence message where like every decision that we make, every like plastic cup we drink out of here, every even just flying here on the planes. You take a 10-hour flight, they serve you 5 cups of water every time it's in a new plastic cup.
Yep.
I think large corporate empires like whoever, all the big major players out there that are force-feeding the world plastics and taking the easy route. It doesn't make sense to me that in Africa they've been charging you for a plastic bag at a supermarket for the past decade, where you go to Walmart in the US, you buy a pack of gum, they double bag it for you. If Walmart was smart, they would charge people for bags. It would not only be good for the environment, it would make them money, reduce the output of plastics. I know this isn't really shark related, but I'm getting more and more like frustrated and at a loss to figure out why these corporate empires aren't stepping up to, because to me it's like the consumers, we all of us are conservationists, I'm sure in some form or other, with stop single-use plastics, but when you're force-fed it and you have no other option, or you didn't bring your own little bottle for some reason, or you don't, why aren't these large empires hiring smart people that are teaching them how to actually make more money, reduce their impact, and look cool to the whole fucking world? I don't know. It's weird. But for sharks, I would show majestic, beautiful footage, and just try to explain to them that like people are not the only important thing on this planet, and that sharks are actually interconnected with us. All the oxygen we breathe pretty much comes from the ocean. If it's not healthy, we're unhealthy. I don't know. It's tough because you start preaching to the choir, like it says, these specialists. We're all posting the same messages to the same people. It's not really getting out to the, I shouldn't say that. It is getting out, but I don't know. I'm sort of at a loss. Maybe I got to start writing 6-page Instagram posts like Ocean, and that'll help, but I don't know.
But you are right. When we deal with these audiences, these are the enlightened audiences. They understand the issue.
Right.
It's the question of that barrier to reach the mass media.
Right.
It's a struggle.
Andy, thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Sorry about the ramble. A little too.
We like rambles. We like
No,
rambles.
not at all.
All right, cool.
Good. So we hope you enjoy the show a little bit.
All right.
You get to hang out, have a beer.
Yeah, I gotta have some German beer.
Yeah, that's
Just
definitely
flew
possible.
in for this.
And
Well, listen, hey, thank you, man. I mean, we met briefly in the Bahamas, but you guys do incredible work. And the fact that you're not backed by Discovery, Nat Geo, BBC, and all these big, I mean, I take the easy route. I get a job to go to some amazing place around the world, get paid to do it, put it on TV, and then it's just sort of this cool perpetual loop. But it's easy because the budget is there, but you guys are doing it on your own accord, and you're doing better work. So hats off to you. Keep it up. Hopefully I can come out and film with you guys one day.
Yeah, that'd be epic.
Yeah.
thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
Great. So this is it for today. We actually passed what we call Bergfest in German, where you reach the mountain and from now on it's just going down because this is the middle of the week. But Saturday, Sunday will be crowded anyway, and we have amazing guests tomorrow as well. Nuno Saar will be here talking about big animals, Imran Ahmad about all-round photography, and Christian Wissel from Mexico about artistic approaches to underwater photography. So thanks a lot for staying with us, and see you guys tomorrow.
Sweet.
Woo!
Thanks. That was really fun.